5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And finally, we are live with Red. He's back for part 4. We may be being joined by Audio Frequency as well during this stream. But for those viewers who are not familiar with Red, with your work so far, before we say your latest, can you just recap on the theory so far, please?
Certainly. All right. Just turning the volume up. So I found a couple more things. But to recap, so we've got all these theories floating around, right? Some of the big ones are the exploding microphone, electrocution, shot from different angles, shot from a drone, shot from a... So I've also got a video I'm producing right now. It's hopefully going to come in a couple days with all this new stuff, just so you guys are aware. But did a couple of experiments. And so essentially to recap, what really happened was... Now, you guys are looking at this probably from the opposite angle, but I'm going to do it as if I'm, I'm you. So keep that in mind. So Charlie, theoretically, according to the Tyler Robinson theory, the Fed slob theory, as they call it, he was shot directly from in front of him from the Losey building, right? Hit him in the neck with a 30-06. And anyone knows anything about hunting and bullets, the 30-06 would have basically just blown his head clean off. I did videos on this talking about how it would explode, and I actually had a ballistics gel dummy that I shot, and it could actually, just like the warp core in one of the Star Trek movies, the spine, the fake spine in there literally jettisoned directly up. I mean, it just completely obliterated it. So there's no way that could happen. We also have the camera from behind, which is different than now, even though Nisi said it was cropped, which that was interesting, but I think that's for other reasons. But he was shot from his right side up on the Tours building is the only thing I found. It might actually have a different name, but I'm going to call it the Tours building. So directly to his right, there was the hallway. There was the Tours building, and in between is where Range Day Bro initially and a fellow named Ty thought that the shot came from in between the two buildings, as did I. But he was shot from up here at about a 31-degree angle, which is pretty steep, and it was with a lower caliber weapon. So the lower calibers are 5.56, 223, which are both military rounds, 5.56 NATO, which that was kind of the, one of the things that they get all the...
Your lady,
that makes me look, thank you, dear. She's a photographer, so she's like, she is right, the lighting is kind of bad. But so he shot from here, and the shot came in, hit him right here above the ear, right, and went down and landed right here next to his T1, which is what they said. Really, I mean, within 3 or 4 days. It wasn't an autopsy, but the surgeon even said, and of course my neighbor, she mows the lawn every 4 days, so I apologize if you can hear that. But it comes in here, it lands here right next to his T1, which is in line, no pun intended, it's in line with what they said that happened to the bullet. It crushed his C2 to C6 vertebrae. So you got basically C1 to C7, crushed his C2 to C6, obliterated it, and then the bullet landed next to his T1. Well, the only way that could happen, even if you're just going logically from that, it's like, well, it had to be at a steep angle, and it had to have been kind of close to his spine. Well, when that happens, Chris Martinson, the PhD from Peak Prosperity, he said the only way that can happen when you have the decorticate posturing is if there's damage to the red nucleus, which is right in the middle of your brain, right in front of the cerebellum, and your cerebellum, this is a separate back part of your brain, that is where all your motor control is. So when he does that it had to have some damage to the red nucleus. Okay, so we can check that off the list. So, I mean, what happened really was that people heard the Range Day Bro, and Ian Carroll and Paramount Tactical, Gary from Paramount Tactical said, well, I was at the campus and I looked and there's no line of sight. So everyone just ixnayed that theory. And I almost did too, but I'm like, well, no, I'm following this evidence. So it's got to come somewhere from here. So then my second video I made, and it's weird because every single, I'm sorry, I'm looking at myself. I should be looking at the camera. Every single piece of evidence that I've received is a piece of evidence of somebody trying to say, no, it was this. Like, wow, you just actually proved me right because now I'm seeing this piece of evidence. So the second piece of evidence was the silhouette that you see. The person who posted it that I saw was Make Germany Great Again. And I had all this information in my video. So my second video shows the silhouette of the shooter taking the shot on the roof. Now, what it looks like is if, oh, okay, I've got to get So they got the chat here. I don't know if that's visible on your side. I'm guessing it is. So basically you just see, and it disappears. Well, it's not like somebody came up and went like this. It doesn't look like that. It looks like it appears and then disappears. So I started doing research into that. That's called atmospheric refraction. That's actually why stars twinkle, right? So basically, and then I in my upcoming video, at Creighton Prep High School, just had a dust devil, which is basically a mini tornado. Okay, it had footage of a dust devil, and it looked like the ground starts rising up and starts moving like this. Now, if you ever see the 1984 Stephen King adaptation of Children of the Corn, that's what happens to the ground at the end of the movie, where, you know, the devil or the bad spirit or whatever comes from the ground. I remember because I was 8 years old when that movie came out, and that's what scared me. The adults all got scared because the kids were like, you know, murdering the whole town. But that's what scared me. But that's what happened in this scenario, is that you see the atmospheric refraction caused by the pressure wave of the this high-powered rifle. There's rifle shots that are high-powered as in terms of versus pistols and smaller caliber cartridges. But the atmospheric refraction causes the silhouette to be seen and then goes away just as quickly. So then there started going more pieces of evidence, and you've got evidence that when you're trying to debunk all the rest of the theories. Well, I'm wearing this shirt here. Now you see, this is another thing that I have coming up. So right there is a little firecracker, just a firecracker. Now, I don't know what the laws are in England. I don't know if you guys can even get your hands on these things. But back in the day, these things, it's basically all you do is you light this, it goes, and it pops. That's the thing. So then so this little piece of firecracker I got taped here caused this damage to my shirt, obviously not on me. So I've got, if you watch my first video, I got a punching dummy. They call it Punching Bob. So it's basically so you can practice, you know, hitting people in certain areas. So I put it on Punching Bob with a piece of aluminum foil, and this is the explosion that this made. Yet somehow a microphone, right, attached to Charlie's body, exploded, didn't leave any residue, right, didn't leave any holes, and didn't leave any damage. You know, if you hold one of these things in your hand, you'll likely wish you hadn't. So the 4th of July here, the Independence Day is coming. Sorry, I don't mean to, you know, tear off this old scab, but Independence Day is coming up, and a lot of people on the 4th of July, many people in America wake up on that morning with the last time that they have all their fingers, because, hey, kids, you know, these fireworks are dangerous. Let the adults who've been drinking all day light them off instead. So if this is what damage is done, all right, and this is the main theory of what happened, aside from the Fed slop, is that people think it's an exploding microphone. Where are the pieces of evidence? So I go into that. So if you've got a piece, literally a microphone that's about this big, all right, shameless plug again, print to be gift. So if you guys need, we got all sorts of Pride flags, Pride umbrellas and Crocs and watch bands for Pride, pretty much any orientation you want. But you got this much of a microphone. It's actually smaller than this. It's actually about 2 by 2. So somehow this little piece exploded and left all these flecks everywhere, but yet somehow they got into the vehicle. Well, how did they get on the vehicle? Nothing was on him, including blood and damaged tissue and hole in the shirt where they said freedom on the side. So I debunk a bunch of this because, first off, if it's going to explode, it's going to cause tissue damage right at the epicenter. It's not going to magically have, you know, energy coming in here and then explode out of his neck. It didn't happen that way. It came from the bullet coming right in here, and bullets, once they enter, they cause massive, what's called hydrostatic shock cavitation. So basically you got an expansion. It basically creates air out of nothing. So say you're in a pool and you go like this with the water, right? Well, you get bubbles because you're basically tearing the water, even though water is very cohesive, because you're moving faster than the water can recombine in on itself. Same thing happens. It cavitates here. It bulges up his neck. You see the tear start forming. It goes like this and comes back in on itself. Well, then why doesn't the blood squirt instantaneously? Well, because first off, it wasn't an artery severing. That's why there was no arterial spray. When it comes back in on itself, it has a massive impact coming back together. So all that damaged tissue comes back together, and that rebound, the energy doesn't stop here. You take 2 cannonballs, shoot them at each other, they don't stop like this. They squish, and the energy just continues on each direction. You obviously just can't see it because it's in air. So when that happens, that slapback is what causes the expulsion of his tissue. And the tissue and blood is dark and it's chunky because that's all damaged tissue. That's also why there wasn't a lot of blood on his security team. And also it didn't look like they were doing anything. Well, if you realize that there's no damage other than the hole that it made, all the damage is internal, which means there's nothing you can do. Maybe you can stick your finger in something to try and stop bleeding, but if there's no arterial spray, there's no bleeding. So what really can you do? So when people say, well, security team didn't do anything, well, assuming they weren't in on it, there really wasn't anything they could do. Then they transported him to the hospital. But again, once you get into the vehicle, where did all those flecks come from? Of course, then you get, they sold the vehicle, they washed the vehicle, sold the vehicle. And I get it. The company doesn't want that oil. It's almost like having a house where somebody died in, or murdered, and it's tough to sell and whatnot. So you've got all those factors. Also, one of the things that's coming up is a fellow named Ty, but it's T-A-E, black fellow, big beard. It was in one of your comments, I believe. So I went and I always try to answer people's comments. Like, well, what about this? And I try to answer it, obviously, as professionally, politely as possible. But he said, "Oh, you're so close. You're so close. It came from between the two buildings, though." I'm like, "No, it didn't. We've already gone through that." And that was actually why this whole case stalled, was because people just basically said, well, it couldn't be from there. So they just left it. They completely forgot about it. Candace Owens recently said, well, when it comes to investigation, you have to go back to the beginning. Well, most people didn't go back to the beginning. They just basically stayed right there and went forward instead of going back. And it's like, well, why can't anybody figure this out? So that should have been the first thing to do, including detectives, including sleuths, including everybody, but they didn't. But when I saw this evidence, I'm like, it has to be this. It has to be some. So what I did was and most of this information is really, really hard to find, because if I tried to find a picture of all the flecks in Charlie's vehicle. I did see it once. Somebody had posted it, and I looked at it and like, okay, that's way too many flecks for it to be an exploding microphone. But I didn't save it because I'm like, okay, when am I going to use this again? I don't need to prove this. But then the theory became more and more and more pervasive. So if you manage to find that, you see all those flecks. Well, that Ty fella, he'd said, you're wrong. This happened. I said, okay, well, like my college professor said, you can't like or dislike that which you do not know. If you haven't seen it, you can't judge it. Don't judge a book by its cover. So I watched his information, and he had something I was looking for a long time. This too came about. People talked about it, and then it disappeared. It was the muzzle flash. So the muzzle flash you can see in a window. It's very, very faint, and it's very, very quick. But so to Charlie's left, you can see the flash come from the window to Charlie's right from behind. Well, if you look at the loss of light, actually, I'm kind of glad she did this, light refraction, okay, you can see the light reflect off of this, okay? But if I go like this, you can't see the light reflect off of this because there's no angle from where the light is coming from to where the camera lens is. Similar to a billiards ball or a pool ball, and what you guys call it there. We just call it pool. Playing some pool, shooting some pool, like Maggie made. So if you shoot a ball.
We got snooker.
Got what? Oh, snooker? Snooker, huh? Well, snookering is something, I think you guys call it snogging, but that's what snookering is here in the States. But so if you've got a pool ball, all right, and you shoot it at a 30-degree angle, it'll bounce back. Let me try to do this again. It'll bounce off at a 30-degree angle. If you do it at a 45-degree angle, it'll bounce back off at a 45-degree angle, which is how you learn to shoot pool. It's basically geometry, right? That thing that when am I ever going to use this? When am I ever going to use any of these high school skills in real life? Well, here you go. So thank you, Miss Bobeck from high school geometry class. So in order for here it is. In order for, same thing with basically taking a light, trying to, of course it's over here somehow, trying to take a light and refract it onto an airplane in a rescue, doing Morse code or SOS, because the Navy used to do that with the lights. But in order for it to refract off, it has to bounce off at an angle to be able to see. So if I wanted to, do my closet over there, I get in the way of my fan. So, but I couldn't do that if I was basically directly in line with the fan, right? We're seeing you. So the person whose camera is over here has the direct line of sight. Now, what Ty said is that if you go in between the two buildings, it reflected off that second level area where there was the porch, well, basically a porch, a picnic table, a door, and they thought there was that plant there that initially they thought maybe the sniper hid in there. Well, that second floor porch, which by the way, and this only got mentioned once that I remember, and this is another thing, it was right at the beginning, and people forget all these things to compound the evidence. So apparently that tourist building is only accessible to faculty and staff. Well, wouldn't that be a perfect place for an assassin to be? All you'd have to do is, here's your card, just like a hotel key, and you credentials, you get up to the roof, shoot, and then you throw away that card. They erase that was ever in the system, and voila, that person was never here, whoever that may have been. You know, and so early on, I even said if we could find whoever did that, allowing that person to have access, that person, even if they didn't know, would at least be able to, yeah, so-and-so came in, you know, told me that we need to give access to this. But anyway, so it's up there on that roof. All right, he said the light then, because it would basically be a direct line, right? Right along the line of the shoulders. Whereas the tourist building would have a little bit of angle towards me like this versus in line in basically 180-degree angle, a straight line. And this angle would make more sense if it came kind of forward, but then landed near his T1 vertebrae on his spine, correct? So if it was straight on, but first off, he got the line of sight, but he said that the light would bounce off that bright white wall, that highly reflective wall, he said, that bright white wall, then bounce off the window in the back, all right, on the Hall of Flags window, the Hall of Flags hall, and then bounce into the line of sight of this camera over here. I said, well, that's impossible. The only way that would be able to happen is if, it was September, which is warm here still, early September. It was a warm, really, I think it was like a 90-degree day there. No cloud in the sky, and it was 12:23. So you got high noon, basically. As much sunlight is coming down, it's not going to reflect, white's not going to reflect off of white, then onto a glossy black surface and into a camera lens. Now, when you come to camera lens, the reason that you see all those sports guys for football or soccer for you guys, and you see all the guys in the sidelines taking all those pictures for magazines and whatnot, their lenses are this freaking big, and they're usually like a beigeish white or a whitish beige color. The reason lenses are so big in cameras is because in cameras, the more light you can allow in, the more light that you can see. Now, anyone who's ever trying to take a picture of a sunset or the moon, and you see this really cool moon shot with your eyes, but then when you try to take the picture of the camera, it's like, well, that looks nothing like what I'm seeing, because the camera's a lot darker than what my eye can see. Well, because biology is a lot better than mechanics. But if you've got enough light coming into the lenses, you can take much better pictures, especially in the dark. Because if you actually take pictures, lighting is all about compromise, because you've got the film speed, what it used to be called, how fast the film processes. You've got your focal point, right? So matter of fact, look right here. My Mensa picture's out of focus because the focal plane, right, is about this big. That's called your f-stop. If you look at it, it says FX on your camera, that's what it's called, the f-stop. So you have it about here, you're looking at about 2.1. If you're going from the neighbor's yard all the way to the other neighbor's yard, you're looking at about an f11. So you can keep more things in focus. And then you've got how fast the shutter opens and closes. So if you go, it's like, well, I tried to take a picture of somebody running or a horse running, and it was blurry. Well, because it didn't have the shutter speed open enough time for it to catch it, you know. So you've got all three factors. So when you got a phone camera with an itty-bitty, well, a phone camera lens is about this big. Now, the reason a phone camera lens can take these good pictures is because of the software. And the reason they take the good pictures is because when you snap that shutter, it takes those three things and says which is going to be the most optimal combination in order to make this shot look in focus, look still, and have all the colors that you're seeing in, hold on, I gotta move this. This is too much light. Have all the colors and all the shadows and all the wrinkles and all the, you know, stuff that you probably don't want, all the detail all that detail in that picture, and it basically combines them and says, all right, this is going to be the best combination, and that's why you get a good shot. Now, in order for this small camera lens in broad daylight at noon at a clear sky on a summer day to capture that little itty-bitty flash, and it's very faint. The person that caught it, I don't know how they caught it. And you got to zoom in to do it too. So zooming in, you notice everything starts to get grainy. Well, that's called the film speed, or ISO, which actually is the standard industry optimization. It's actually backwards. So even though it wasn't French or something, they somehow swapped the letters. I don't know. But you can only, it's almost like trying to get, you got pixels, you got 16 pixels, and then you got 64 pixels. Well, the more pixels you have, the better quality is, because each pixel can then do the light, dark, the colors and whatnot. So that's why you look, and it gets, and the closer you get in on it, you get that magenta and green around the edges. It's called chromatic aberration, because the camera is basically trying to kind of fill in the blanks. Well, if you got a small camera lens taking that light, you have to have a fairly strong source of light to bounce out that glossy black window. So not only do you have the angle that it's at, you've got that camera, what can possibly cause that muzzle flash to be seen. So what I did, and you'll see this in my upcoming video, what I did was I took pictures of, took the pictures that were online that I could find, and I went and saw which camera that was from, because somebody had actually positioned each camera, which is what AudioFreq basically used. He used the cameras that were there, got the original audio from it, so it wasn't corrupted, and it wasn't what we call lossy in the business. Back when you had cassette tapes, digital now, you basically have a lossy of like 0.001%, so you lose a little bit of the quality and fidelity. But back when you had cassette tapes and you tried to dub, but that means copy for all you know-it-all youngsters who don't even know what Napster is. So you get a copy of a cassette tape, which is basically a magnetic tape, and just like a record, the magnetic particles capture the sound. Well, you try to dub that onto another tape, and you lose a little bit of the quality. Now, back then, we didn't care, because car stereos were, basic as can be, and your Sony headphones, you just cared about portability and driving with your tunes with your girl in the car. You didn't care about the quality. You wanted to do that at home. Well, it's the same thing. If you've got lossy, some of that disappears. Well, it's the same thing with light. So the light's not going to bounce off a white bright surface off to there. So the only way that would happen is if you add the direct. So if you take the line of sight and the angles, and you basically look at where I and AudioFreq say that the shooting came from on the roof of the building. So here's the building, and here's Charlie. It's going to be backwards for you guys, but the shot basically came from right around here. Well, if you take this bouncing off the window, going basically past Charlie, the tent, and onto that camera, it's a 10-degree angle. So just like with a mirror, I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly at 10 degrees, but it's got to be within a margin of error. So if you do that, it's both 10 degrees from the shooter to where the window is, and then 10 degrees from where the window is to the camera. So that's yet another piece of evidence that basically saying the muzzle flash had to come from here and then right to that camera. So I've got that. I've got the fact that you can see the bullet coming through this way. You can see the damage that it causes. You've got that damage indicating that it's from up here. You've got AudioFreq, who did the analysis that said, well, the bullet can only come from up here. You've got that muzzle flash angle. You've got the fact that any microphone, exploding microphone, which is the other leading cause, is completely impossible and impractical. And also, there was footage of, when you see the footage from the front and Charlie goes like this, you'll see a fleck of something come down. Ian Carroll and Baron Coleman were on a podcast together talking about that. And of course, they thought the microphone, exploded and something flew up and then it came all the way down. Okay, well, what goes up must come down. And also what goes down must have come up. Where's footage of the thing going up? And it didn't happen. So I've got 5 pieces of evidence and the reflection of the muzzle flash saying it came from here. It came from here. There's no question about it. And then you've got the debunking of the main theory. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, there's no, and I constantly get people in the comments. I constantly get people talking about it everywhere. Well, no, it's not this. This is what happened. And hopefully somebody who had contacted Candace on my behalf, so hopefully I'll be hearing from her tomorrow, because I mean, between you and her, if we can get this message out there, because here's the problem. I've said all along, we now know or at least I know the how. We know the how, we can then get to the who and the why. So, and there's been some interesting theories that have come up from that, because you've got factors like, and this is some new stuff that I found and some old stuff, but apparently that Monday afterwards, Charlie and Erica were going to redo their end of life documents. Well, that's kind of interesting. You know, if it was something that you wanted to have done, and they're going to change it. You know, you're in a will, and all of a sudden someone's going to take you out of the will. Well, if that person's going to, you know, die, you want to make sure that they die before that will gets redone. So there's lots of pieces of evidence like of that nature that have been springing up that need answers. But then again, that goes to the why and to the who. Now, one of the things that first off, I guess, is to stop and see if there. I can't do both at the same time. Trying to remember all the stuff that I'm going to say. As you can tell, my mind goes. People they call me like Lionel Jr. because the way my brain works. Is there any questions you have or your audience has that I can and should answer before we go on?
Well, there's about 20 questions pending, but we've only got about 15 minutes left before the next show. So perhaps get everything you want to say out, and then I'll give you the questions.
Okay. So here's something recently that came about, and apparently this fellow was on. Excuse me. Apparently this fellow was on Candace's show about a month ago. But the guy is, I think his name's Corby Hall. He makes this product called Fold AR. Now, I'm familiar with the folding weapons. In fact, I have one. It's just a different kind. So essentially what it is you've got your AR platform, which is basically just a platform, almost like a car chassis. So you've got your, pardon my mess in the background, but you got your AR, and basically it folds. So you can put it compact in a backpack, and you can take it out, deploy it, and you're in what's called battery, your back and battery. So you can actually, and it was designed, and I think this is a phenomenal idea. Well, then again, that's my opinion. I'm from the States and I hunt. But the idea was for school resource officers. So you've got all these incidents, Marjorie Douglas and Adam Lance of the one in Connecticut. Oh my God, how can I be forgetting this? But you've got all these Columbine, you've got all these instances of shooters. So essentially, the school resource officer got the ability to have a compact firearm. So if an active shooter situation happens, he can take that, unfold it, and be a battery and deal with the shooter. So that was the idea of what this guy made his company for, to make this particular firearm for. Well, apparently in 2024, a Texas deputy purchased one of these firearms, just a single firearm, and he just purchased it, bought it, and apparently about a month later, it got stolen out of his car. Lo and behold. So apparently nothing happened to him. I guess, well, what are you going to do? Thefts happen, and it's an unfortunate part of anything, whether it's a car, whether it's a gun, whether it's a, heirloom. But the morning that Charlie got biggest bangest, I guess I should say, just so YouTube doesn't get all weird on. The morning that happened, the ATF contacts Corby at Fold AR saying, "Hey, I've got the serial number. The 02735 was the number of the serial number of the firearm," and said, "Yeah, well, where did this go?" It's like, "Well, I sold it to this individual." Okay, and you have 24 hours to respond, which he did. They said, "I sold it to this individual." So he contacts that individual and he says, "Did the ATF ever contact you about this?" He said, "No." So the ATF contacts me the same morning that Charlie Kirk gets off, but yet they never contacted him. And the funny part about that, though, is that I wondered if it was a 300 blackout, because that's another thing we're going to talk about. So you got 223, 556. Well, if it's a 30 caliber, the only 30 caliber in existence that won't blow somebody's head off, that won't be, a big, huge, hunting bullet. It's going to be a bullet about like that. So more powder, more charge, just like any explosion, more substrate. You got a bomb this big or a bomb this big. This one's going to have a bigger boom. So the only one that's available in a 30 caliber is the 300 blackout, and the 300 is .300, That's where it gets the name. Same with 30-06, it's a 30.30, 30 caliber. So the only 30 caliber, which is what the ATF said was a 30 caliber class. But like I said in my first video, those types of smaller bullets, they basically fragment and shatter. You won't be able to get the striations from the twisting, the rifle twisting, and that's how they identify it. They look at it under a microscope and they say, okay, this is the same twisting and the same little imperfections and nicks. They won't be able to identify it because all that's gone, which is why the mob used to use 22s. And lo and behold, they said they can't conclusively tie Tyler Robinson's gun, which is convenient yet somewhat inconvenient. Anyway, so I wondered if this was a 300 blackout that this 02735 firearm had. Apparently it wasn't. But apparently a little while later, about a year later, the same individual, even though he doesn't have that firearm anymore, buys two upper receivers, which is where the bullet goes, right? The lower receiver is basically kind of like the trigger mechanism and everything. So the upper receiver, he buys two, not one, two 300 blackout upper receivers in the same Cerakoting, which is basically just a coating so it doesn't rust. Same color, same Cerakote as the gun that was supposedly stolen. Why would this person buy that? So then we've got that now. If that pans out, we've got now a possibility that we can then link. I mean, obviously there's tons of firearms out there, but why would somebody who had ties, the Corby fella had ties to that Victor Marks fella who had ties to Charlie Kirk. So it kind of makes me think that maybe there's something there. So I'm trying to do a little bit of digging more into that. But that was one of the things I wanted to say, aside from the 30 caliber, if it indeed, and of course the court case said that the ATF won't show how they do their tests on all this stuff, whether it be the ballistics on the bullet or whatnot. But why would they not? They said they don't do that for anything or anybody. Okay, but if you're, because there's academies for both law enforcement to go to the FBI training academy, and there's also a forensic teams in bigger cities that then, if they're like Top Gun in the movie Top Gun, if you're the best fighter pilot, you go to Top Gun to become an even better fighter pilot. If you're one of the top guys in the forensic labs that do ballistics or whatever else the FBI does, mitochondrial DNA analysis, they send those people to the FBI to then have the FBI train them. So wouldn't it be a nice, first off, a nice public gesture, and for this case to say, well, this is the way we do it. It's no secret. This is the way we do it, and this is how so we can ixnay any FBI trying to muddy the waters in this. So I know we only probably got about 10 minutes left, so I will take any questions you guys got.
All right, man. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat right now. I'll start with the questions that have come up so far. So Anna is saying, what do you think about Charlie's security, the weird signaling just before he was shot?
So initially, I didn't think that there was much to that, because it's just like if you're deer hunting. The only time you're ever going to wait for something, wait for a signal, is if you got the cameraman in the back. And a lot of times on the hunting shows, you'll see, you good? Yeah, take the shot. Boom. So you needed to make sure the cameraman's on the deer and in focus. But in this situation, you're not going to wait for somebody to talk about trans people or somebody to talk about, it's whenever whenever the shooter has the option and you're going to take them out that day, you take them out. Now they might have said clear for this or whatnot, and then been communicating all around. That's a possibility. Also, the palm gun, even though that's complete garbage too. But somebody had mentioned, it was Nisi. She had mentioned that all of his security was on this side of him, on all the events, on all the tours before that. She said this one, they had people on the right. Why? First, and Dan Flood always kept his arms down, but this time he kept his arms crossed and was going like this when he was talking into his microphone, which he never did before. But she said if they were signaling, they needed to be visible to the guy on the Losi Center. And I thought, well, if that is the case, why would it's not the Losi Center, but it would be incredibly visible to the guy up here. So I don't know. It would have to be further investigated. You have to talk to those guys, put them on lie detectors and whatnot. But to me, it's a possibility. But I mean, even if that was the case, that basically only shows that they were in on it, which I mean would be huge. But again, we need to get to the how before we get to the why, and that's the why. It's like, well, what's their motivation for doing these hand signals? They could have been talking to each other. They could have been, legitimately doing. And I always look at the phrase. All right, what if they're corrupt? Answer every question. If they're corrupt, look at it. If they're all innocent, Erica and everybody else, and run everything, do the analysis as if they're all innocent, and see which one fits up better. So it's completely possible, and especially if they did switch everybody over here, you got those anomalies of the guy talking in his microphone when he never did that before, like as an NFL coach. But the shot came from here, so if he's got guys here and they are giving signals, that is a distinct possibility. But I don't know if it means a hill of beans or if it's possible, but I definitely think that is something to be added into the mix as of now.
Got a few questions about Trump. So why are we even talking about this when nothing will come from it? Trump isn't ever going to do anything. And the other one is, do you think Trump knew what was going on?
Possibly. Now, I've worked for a lot of companies. I've worked for HP. I've worked for Johnson Controls, which is headquartered here, in Milwaukee. And, we had issues in there on, so I basically was in charge of taking the computers and getting them to everybody. And, whatever your ID is, that ID goes to your computer and it gets locked in and all that, setting up their account, setting up all the programs that they need and all that other stuff. To think that, I think at the time his name was Alex Molinaro, was the CEO of Johnson Controls, to think that he knew anything about the issues we were having about, getting our supply or getting the servers to be able to connect with the computer. He didn't know anything about that. Now, he very well could have known. But again, in the grander scheme of things, if he did know, okay, well, then it goes all the way up the top to the who and the why. But something that somebody had mentioned to me, and of course, at first I thought it was complete nonsense. And this is probably going to cause waves, so I almost hesitate to say this. But somebody said, well, what if Charlie was sick and dying, or he decided that because, well, like Jesus, he took himself out. He martyred himself for the cause just to make sure that whatever, Trump didn't go to war, or, if he's out of the situation, even though he's probably the best person to get the conservative message out, if he takes himself out, he becomes a martyr. And I said in my first or second video, 1 martyr's worth 10 posturing leaders. I'm like, well, that sounds ridiculous. Men need purpose, and he was the most driven man that I've ever known of, aside from maybe Donald Trump or maybe some of these other leaders at a very, very high level. But I said, okay, well, I do what I always do. I start taking it from the lens. I start running through all this stuff. Right? What if when they were going to do the end of life redo that Monday before? It's like, well, okay, if he was going to take himself out, why would he do that if he was about to sign the documents? But then I thought, well, that would be a perfect alibi, wouldn't it? And then I started thinking, if you propose, I don't know if you're married or not, but anybody that proposes to their wife, the story's always the same. And think about this, guys. The story's always the same. The day that he proposed, it's like he was just acting different. He's so weird. It's like he was on edge. It's like, what's wrong with you? Oh, nothing's wrong, honey. Nothing's wrong. Because he's so nervous, trying to get everything right. When my parents went to Jamaica for the 25th, my dad had planned renewing their vows on the beach. So he's trying to get everything ready. He bought a new ring and everything like that. And mom comes back and, said, oh, we did this. And we went to the beach and, we saw this festival and blah, blah, blah. She's telling the story. And she said, yeah, when your dad renewed the vow, the entire trip, he's just on edge. I'm like, what is wrong with you? They've been together for 25 years, right? So you know each other. That's a long time to be doing unto others as they do unto you. She's like, what is wrong with you? No, nothing. I want to make sure we get down there okay, and blah, 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 blah. So then once everything was over, the old man could relax, and then they had a good time. But even she knew that something was up. I'm like, well, if you kind of take that into it, like you knew something was up. It's like, honey, I'm going to take myself out. I'm going to take myself out to the cause, or I'm going to take myself because I'm dying. Well, no, the kids are young. It's like, yeah, just like the Jedi. It's like they take kids when they're young because they've got no attachments. The kids don't know me yet. I'll just be a faint memory. No, you need the kids. It's like, I'm going to die in 2 years anyway. And I've had cancer, so I've had dad's thought, okay, what am I going to do with the time left? So I'm starting to think in that terms. It's like, well, it's kind of ridiculous. But if we start thinking about all the things in that vein, it's like, I don't know, man. Because if you think, why are people acting weird? Why is it? Oh, Mitch Snow said that Erica and Brian Harple were at Fort Huachuca. Well, if this is planned, then they'd be there for the planning. So like I said, it's still far in my mind, but I found this out because I asked questions about everything. I analyze it through every possible lens that I can, and I come to the conclusion. So if that was the case, and say Trump knew about it, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be a martyr for the cause. I'm dying anyway, or I'm going to be like Jesus, because people, it's not just, people in a certain part of the middle of the globe where the certain strait is, where there's conflict now, that are willing to die for a cause. So it's not that, it's just not as normalized in other religions as it is for other religions. But that's something that came up in the last couple of days that I went, wow, what if? So if Trump knew, and he's like, okay, I know you're going to do this. Okay, we'll keep it silent. But like a surprise party or like an engagement or something like that, if you try to ask somebody, hey, are they throwing a surprise party for me? No, they're not. It's like, why are you acting so weird? So you think, why are these people acting so weird of it? Well, maybe they did know. Like I said, I'm not saying that this is what happened by any means. But again, ask the question. Ask the question, find out. So Trump knew? I don't know. Does it really make a hill of beans? Because, he's 76? He might live to be 90, but he's on his way out. So I don't know. I really don't think it doesn't matter. Aside from if it goes that high, and they did try to take him out because they wanted him out, versus they took him out and they knew about it. So I don't know if that makes a whole lot of...
Yeah, thank you, Red. You've been absolutely on fire tonight. You've got about 30 questions pending, but we have run out of time. So viewers, put a 1 in the chat if you'd like to see Red come back for a part 5 on the Charlie Kirk conspiracy and answer your questions. Put a 2 in the chat if you want Red to bog off. I'm sure it's all 1s. And I've got the Print B link down there. If anyone wants to use your printing services, do they still get an 11% discount if they use the Attwood promo code?
Yeah, and you know what? I'll make sure that she puts on, because it's the Pride part is printtobepride.com, so you can get pretty much anything you want. We got tons of products, like I said, every orientation. So yeah. So hopefully, both those things you guys say, hey, you'll want me back, because I think that some of the things I've got pending in the next few weeks, I think might be worth listening to. But yeah, we'll put that discount for you.
I'm going to let you go because we've got to start the next show. But thank you, brother. Hope to speak soon with Audio Frequency as well. Cheers.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Bye. All right, viewers. So we've got another show about to start. But I also want to announce that I'm going to be speaking at the Sounds Beautiful Festival. It's June 26th to 28th. It's a 3-day festival. I'm speaking at noon on the Saturday, and it's in the beautiful south coast of the UK, Dorset, Gaunts House Estate. Anyway, the link for that is in the description box, and I'll also put it in the live chat right now. I know some viewers have already messaged me and said they're going to be attending that. Sounds Beautiful Festival. It's a family festival. It's going to be lovely. All right, so Ron's got tons of content coming out tonight. When this video ends, it's going to take you over to Lily Nova Starseed, who is an ET contactee. And then after that show, Ron's got Darius J. Wright coming on to talk about the universal laws, energy, frequency, and the awakening. So tons more great content with Ron. Get ready for it. I'm going to end this one. It will take you there.